Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Warspite, one of my absolute favorite battleships in the entire game. For rather obvious reasons, this ship is quite consistent at collecting those dev strikes. We have to look at it though in the context of this new event, where of course the Eskimo is going to be the main feature of this new Narvik to Dunkirk event. And they've made some changes based on feedback. So Eskimo here is going to be a little bit cheaper. It's at 800 tokens instead of the old 960 tokens to get, which means it's going to be a little bit cheaper than a standard tier 8 premium if you grind out this entire adventure here. It's going to take you a while, a couple months to actually grind this whole thing out, but that is a much better event. But crucially, and information that I didn't have before, we see Warspite available for 600 tokens. And this is where it gets really interesting. Eskimo, if you didn't see the video, just a worse Cossack. Go get yourself a Cossack or wait for Black Friday for the Cossack B if you'd like a discount there. But Warspite is awesome. This ship is so good at tier 6. There's some problems with playing it, but it's such a good ship. And if you can get it in this event, it's only going to cost you 1,000 doubloons. You only need to get one bundle, assuming you grind out the entire event, which does take you some time, of course. But in these bundles, you're going to be getting 35 of these tokens guaranteed from the 1,000 doubloon bundle, which is enough to get you the Warspite after grinding through all of the missions. You can get a total of 590 tokens throughout this entire event, and I would recommend, if you're going to grind through this event, that you get Warspite instead of Eskimo. Personally, just get a Warspite. It is so much better at its tier. And to Wargaming, thank you very much for listening to all the feedback on this very poor event to start out with. Thank you very much for changing it. Although I have some thoughts around all these events recently needing changes, I feel like all our feedback over the last 6 months, a year to these events has been pretty consistent, whether it be the wider World of Warships community or from CCs in particular. Wargaming, it seems to be pushing boundaries as much as they can until they meet enough resistance, and then they pull back just a little bit. Is our feedback really working, or is our feedback only required to prevent these events from spiraling out of control? Which in my opinion, they already have, to be honest with you. It's a little demoralizing to try and provide feedback at all if all they're going to do is not really listen to it and only use it as a benchmark to say, okay, we can't go past this line now. Rather than if they were actually listening to our feedback, these events wouldn't launch in such an awful state like they consistently have been for at least the last 6 months. Now, getting back to the Warspite, the reason this ship is so much fun to play is quite simple. You have some of the best guns at your tier. Tier for tier, Warspite guns at tier 6 are some of the best in the entire game. They just so consistently land most of their shells exactly where you want them to go. It is battleship dispersion, but crucially, you have 2.0 Sigma, which is quite rare at this tier. Combined with 380mm guns, you get a lot of overmatch for your tier. They're 381, but the overmatch is the same. Nice dev strike in on a Fuso. It is so unbelievably consistent when it comes to the Warspite. Very similar to Queen Elizabeth, of course. So if you're wondering about the playstyle, unsure if you even want to spend the 1,000 doubloons, if you do want to grind this whole thing out as well, Queen Elizabeth is quite similar. The AP, though, has shorter fuses and less pen. And I find that it's a little bit less consistent for some reason. Warspite just works a little bit better for me. Although maybe that's helping you a lot against those light cruisers, those slightly shorter fuses. Give a Queen Elizabeth a go. Maybe you'll find that it's not your type of playstyle. But for me, consistent main guns at these tiers are just so fun. We took a look at the Bayern recently in a ship request, which also has those 380mm guns, similar overmatch, same dispersion, but with 1.8 Sigma. And with dispersion upgrade, it was pretty good. but I don't think it was quite this consistent. Here we're seeing the impact of the sigma parameter on our dispersion. If you didn't know, sigma is the tendency of your shells to go towards the center of the dispersion ellipse that's drawn by your dispersion numbers. Sigma is quite important, and the higher the number, the better. 2.0 is very, very good. And for Warspite, that's what gives us such accurate salvos here. There are, however, a few downsides to playing the Warspite and using these guns, one of them being your shell velocity is quite slow. Compared to all the other tier 6 battleships, your shell velocity is the slowest on this AP. Not by a ton, but it is a little bit slower, so getting used to these guns again, this is one of my first games that I was playing in this ship for this video. Yeah, we just simply don't lead the Omaha enough, and we don't land any of our shells. That really, you can't complain about dispersion there when you're misaiming, especially because the dispersion is so good on this ship. You're rarely going to be blaming the game. It's mostly going to be your own aim, which is another benefit. You get to play a mid-tier, lower-tier ship, battleship, and really learn how to aim, how to hit targets that are actively avoiding you. It's not always going to happen, but as you'll see throughout this battle, this Omaha does a great job of dodging our incoming fire. So a really nice way to learn how to predict where people are going. You'll also just get people sitting flat broadside to you as well. So you're going to land consistently high damage salvos like that as well. Warspite also has a really nice consumables kit, specifically your heal, healing you back over 16% HP. Typically we find heals heal back 14% HP at a time. Here it's 16.8. You also heal back 60% pen damage instead of 50. So small benefits that make Warspite relatively tanky in longer duration games. You're not going to be winning any brawls, especially against ships that also have 380mm guns, or the HE spammers of your tier. You will just be getting overmatched. The armor here is really not all that amazing, but at least you do have a really fast damage control. This ship gets a cruiser damage control, I believe, instead of the battleship one. So 5-second duration only, but a 60-second cooldown instead of the 80-second cooldown we see on all the other battleships. So small differences there, but works out in our favor more often than not. Warspite is a ship that can last a long time in these tier 6 battles. If you don't get blowouts, this is a very, very strong ship throughout the duration of the game. You do have to contend, though, with some rather poor range. Using our spotter plane there, and still not quite enough range to finish off that Omaha. But an absolutely ridiculous first game here. 144,000 damage, confed high caliber dev strike. And that's still only a first class efficiency badge there, because this ship is just that good. You have to perform really well if you want to get an E out of it. There's some problems, though, outside of the Warspite kit. The Matchmaker. Yeah, the Matchmaker we have to talk about. Tier 6, Tier 5, Tier 7. The Matchmaker here puts you against double carrier, double sub, even triple sub more frequently than it should. And by that, I mean that should not be possible. And yet, here we are. Double carrier in this one with single sub. It's not a fun experience, I can tell you that much. We just get pestered by carriers nonstop at this tier. And as a new player, I wonder if this is such a great experience for retaining players in this video game. There's essentially no games being played by actual players below tier 5. And because of that, it's all bots. And then new players get thrown into tier 5, tier 6 Matchmaker, and they just get beat up on by all of the carriers and submarines that they just can't do anything about at their tier. I wonder if that is such a good idea, wargaming. Although, it doesn't really matter what I say when it comes to carriers or subs. Wargaming is just going to continue to steamroll ahead on that and not listen to their community at all, unfortunately. So Warspite will be really, really bad into subs and carriers. You have no AA to speak of, not that anything really does at this tier, and because of that, you're gonna have to play very passive. I play too aggressive here, it's a blowout, so whatever, right? But this is your Matchmaker a lot of the time. Basically all of my games had carriers that are going to focus on the battleship at this tier. Subs as well. So you're forced to play quite far back. The matchmaker is just so unfortunate these days. Pretty much across the board. I was having a conversation with some friends in this game about where can you consistently have the most fun? And there's really no tier that I would point to being consistently very fun. I thought about saying these mid tiers because we have a little bit less power creep when it comes to things like experimental ships or super ships being absolutely crazy. But here, we have to deal with double carrier games, even single carrier and sub games. You really don't have any good tools to deal with them at these tiers. So it results in very unfun matches. And even though Warspite can still do well, it's just really not fun to be left at the mercy of a carrier that just gets to drop you over and over again. It is another rant on carriers. Check it off on your bingo boards, but I had to say it because that is a big problem for this ship. But when we do find those games without the carrier, the sub is on that opposite flank. There's a lot of fun to be had at these mid tiers. People don't play nearly as far back. The matches are typically played at much closer ranges. And yes, while Warspite does not have the best armor, it can still do quite well in these brawling situations if you recognize them to be in your favor, or at least not to a massive disadvantage. Like if there was a Byron on this flank, that'd be a different story. But a Fuso, we can actually angle to that. Helena, though, DPM-wise, absolutely terrifying, so we have to try and deal with that to start with. Using island cover to try and isolate angles. You notice here, we didn't have a lot of support on this flank, so we have to try and use all the terrain, all the tools to our advantage as we can. Hopefully, we can take a lot of the focus fire, and our Minsk on this flank can farm. That's what's so nice about having these really strong heals and damage controls. Even at these closer ranges, we are still able to fight for quite a long time. Warspite also has one of the best turning circle radiuses in the entire game. It's hilarious. It's 550 meter turning radius. Your rudder shift's a little slow at like 14 seconds, but the turning radius is better than a lot of destroyers on a battleship. It's quite maneuverable in that regard. But your acceleration is quite slow, and again, that rudder shift. So you're not easily dodging torpedoes if you're not predicting them, but you can turn your ship quite quickly when you really do need to. A downside to all of these battleships, or pretty much all of these battleships at lower tier, of course, is going to be their relatively slow top speeds. So you're not getting around the map all that quickly. If you win your flank, or the flank is just not all that interesting, you do have to resort to relatively boring traversals of the map. It's not going to happen all the time, but that can be a problem, not just for Warspite though, at these, but for every ship at these lower tiers. The problem of the range only makes that issue a little bit worse. Unfortunately, not quite getting those citadels into the broadside Fuso like we were before, but still really good and consistent damage, even very greedily aiming for the waterline there. And we're still landing 3 out of the 4 shells when we're firing our front turrets or our rear turrets like that. Warspite is just so consistent. This ship has been in the game a very long time, and I love to see that it's still a very strong ship these days. Even into up tiers, especially into tier 7s, you're still going to do excellent because the battleships at that tier typically are still getting overmatched by 380mm guns. Once you get the tier 8 up tier, yeah, then you're hurting because you don't overmatch them and suddenly they overmatch you all the time. But those 2 tier up tiers are always going to be a bit of a pain point. But even at these longer ranges into a Nagato, you'd think that we're at such a massive disadvantage, and yet the overmatch there is still going to carry us against those ships. Warspite, it's quite good, man. It really is. It's just got that unfortunate matchmaker issue. You got to get lucky on the matchmaker to have some of these fun games that you can play against other surface ships. But when you get them, Warspite is a really, really good time still here in 2025. And if you're willing to grind out this adventure here, 1,000 doubloons is a nice discount on this ship. At the end of the day, though, Warspite is a relatively vanilla battleship experience, even if it is quite fun, in my opinion, accurate. I do enjoy that more standard, consistent battleship experience, of course. It is still a pretty long adventure to grind through. We'll have to see what these later missions end up looking like. perhaps it isn't worth spending all that time, because that is a resource as well, your time spent, and then just the 1,000 doubloons at the end for Warspite. But let me know what you think about Warspite in the comments down below. As always, you can check down there for others' opinions on the Warspite if you're interested in getting it. And Queen Elizabeth, of course, is a free version that you can just grind through the tech tree to tier 6 and see what it's like. It is a little different, but fairly comparable, I would say. As for the build on the Warspite, I ended up going relatively greedy with the build. Upgrades looked like this, and thanks to the fast damage control, relatively fast damage control, not going damage control system here, helping with our maneuverability. And then, yeah, I ended up going greed, heavy AP Furious. Maybe not the best if you're newer to battleships. You can definitely burn down a little too quickly to this, but it's quite fun. And then if you do end up having Cunningham, that'll get you your 5th heal. Instead of using this, you get your 5th heal using the 2 kills here, this extra talent, and that does get you enough healing for those longer games while still greeting out a pretty crazy build. Over 12,000 alpha damage with this one, a little under that if you don't have heavy AP. 30-second reload, relatively standard stuff there. At 550 turning radius is absolutely hilarious, and pretty good detect as well. The problem, of course, becomes your armor. If you're facing yourself, it is a pretty nasty fight. 26 mil armor everywhere. That is tough. There is some extra armor plating here. Your upper belt, I don't know, this mid deck, I guess we could call it, is a little bit more armored. But yeah, Warspite takes quite a lot of damage from its own caliber of gun and higher. You got to be a little bit careful of that. But if you're fighting those smaller caliber 356 battleships, your angling actually is quite effective. As for your Citadel, quite hard to hit this one, I would say. It is pretty much waterline and a little bit spaced here as well. Warspite's quite fun though. I do enjoy it, and hopefully it's not too insane of a grind. If you're interested in grinding it out, again, definitely recommend this over Eskimo. But I am a battleship player, not as much into those destroyers. I do love Cossack. It's just that Eskimo is quite a bit worse in every way than a Cossack. But thank you very much for watching this video, and have a great rest of your day.